Hi everybody, today I have with me Sentari Minor, top executive at Evolve MD. Sentari, how you doing today?
Good, how are you?
Doing well. So tell me a little bit about yourself, your role at Evolve MD and what you do there.
Oh man, where do you want me to start about myself? I will give you the quick 2-minute version of Sentari Minor. Phoenix native, grew up in Phoenix, loved it here. Went to high school right downtown in Phoenix and then decided that I did not want to stay in Arizona for college, so I went the furthest away to a small liberal arts school in Indiana.
All right.
Where I studied English there, and then afterwards I decided that I was actually missing Phoenix, so I came back to Phoenix and I've been here since 2007. So over the course of my career I've been mostly in marketing and PR, did some social impact work, did a lot of work with CEOs and getting them politically engaged, and then now I oversee strategy and marketing for Evolved MD, where we embed behavioral health specialists on site in a primary care practice.
Very interesting work. How many employees do you have at Evolve MD?
So we have about 40 right now, but we're rapidly growing, so we should probably be at the 80, close to 100 mark by Jan 1.
Okay. And are you guys only based in the state, or are you more regionally?
So right now we're doing a drive for kind of the Southwest saturation. So we are currently in Arizona, Utah, and moving into Colorado, but hopefully we will have an East Coast presence in 2021 or 2022 too.
Awesome. Very cool. So Sentari, tell me a little bit about your journey. I don't think when you went to school you thought you'd be working for Evolve MD and staffing everywhere. Tell me a little bit about that and your mindset kind of moving from college back to Arizona.
Yeah, that's a good question. So again, studied English, so I didn't really know, well, I thought I wanted to be a journalist. I did not want to be a journalist. I thought I wanted to be a writer full-time. Did not want to be a writer full-time. So when I came back to Phoenix, I went to what I knew, which was editing. So I was an editor for a publishing firm in Scottsdale for a little bit. And then I decided that, in high school and in college, one of the things that was very important to me was community service, giving back. And in my role right after college, it just wasn't community focused. And so I was looking around and figuring out where could I leverage, my background in English with actually making a social impact. So I went on staff at the Rodell Foundation for about 2 or 3 years. The Rodell Foundation did education initiatives in high need, so low income schools. So I did communications and program management for them. And then for some reason, I got the fundraising bug. So I knew that I wanted to make an impact, but I thought, it would be great to actually be part of a team that's raising the dollars. So I actually moved over to the Arizona Humane Society, which I will say, not my mission, but I needed to start somewhere. So I did corporate and foundation relations for them.
You had an impact there.
Yes, I mean, to be clear, there is a great impact in the Arizona Humane Society. It just wasn't my mission. Mine's kids, kids in healthcare.
Yeah.
And so I did that for a little bit, then went over to a firm called Social Venture Partners, where I was the director there, really working with nonprofits and social impact organizations, helping them build capacity, helping them find funding, and then that's where I really realized the power of the nonprofit sector and the social impact sector. And but I also realized that from there, philanthropy could only do so much, and the piece that was always missing, so we do stuff around homelessness or domestic violence or insert issue here, but unless you had public policy will or politics were involved, it was never going to get done. So you could throw millions and millions of dollars after homelessness, but if your elected officials don't care, it's never going to happen.
Yeah, and let's lean into that a little bit. A little bit of an intersection between politics and social impact.
Right.
So you need the politicians to have the social impact.
You absolutely do. In fact, I would actually, there's arguments that...
That's a rare response, by the way, and I'd love to hear it.
Well, it's, philanthropy is only so limited because the dollars only go so much. So if you're going up against a state that, or a municipality that just doesn't agree with what you're trying to push, so if homelessness is not a priority in insert city here, I can get $50 million, but it's never going to make a move, right? So you think about the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They have put so much money into public education, but I would say in the 15 years they've been doing it, nothing really has happened, right? It's because you have to have the public goodwill, you have to have the public policy, you have to have politicians involved. So that's when I went over to a firm called Gen Next, and I worked with CEOs, owners, entrepreneurs in Phoenix, Dallas, and in San Francisco to really get them engaged in really important conversations, because there is a mindset that not only do you need the politics piece or political political advocates, you also need private sector advocates. And so I was working with those folks to say, hey, these are your elected officials, this is what they do to drive that policy. And also, by the way, you as the owner of a company should understand what's happening in the world. I'm not here to drive a narrative, but I am here to help you figure out what you're passionate about and how politics plays a role in that, and how philanthropy plays a role in that.
And put your dollars to work.
Put your dollars to work, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
because I see so many times entrepreneurs, they write the corporate check to insert organization here,
Right.
annual gala, but then what do they do outside of that? And I think that kind of runs into that intersection you're talking about of social impact and politics and philanthropy. So it's really three sort of different spheres we're working in, and you brought them together.
Yeah, and it was, I will say it was not without many challenges. It's so, because a lot of times people they have the status quo so ingrained, so they just wanted to do the philanthropic piece, and we're like, well, I don't really want to engage in politics, but oh my God, it's such an imperative for you to engage in politics. I remember, was it Matt Lewis? I think it was Matt Lewis who I interviewed. He's a political pundit. You've seen him on everything from Bill Maher to CNN. He's been all over the place, but he said in our interview, you may not care about politics, but politics care about you. So it's really important that you understand that there's no way you can not engage in the political conversation because it's going to shape your life in some way. So why not be well versed in it? Why not have a position? Why not understand how you and the dollars that you invest can be pushed in a different way?
And do you think, in today's political climate, every year we see on every news station, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, OAN, make sure not to talk about politics around your dinner table this upcoming holiday.
Gosh.
That goes completely against what you just said.
Yeah, you have
What is the importance of that open dialogue?
I think it's, last year showed us more so that there's so many disparate groups coming together, even within a family or with a friend group, and a lot of folks felt compelled to not discuss anything because they didn't want to be triggered or they didn't want to fight or whatever. But I say, as long as you approach conversations where you can give people mercy and grace and realize that, like, just because you believe a certain way doesn't mean you have any negative feelings or ill will towards me. You're socialized in a different way, raised in a different way. But if we can have a thoughtful dialogue, then that's really important and
civil
really
dialogue.
Impactful. Civil dialogue, really impactful. And I hope conversations like this really encourage people to do that, but I know that people have moved away from even having conversations about politics. I love it. And I've never walked away from a conversation where I'm like, I can't be friends with that person. It's like, we have the conversation, you have your differences, I have mine, and here we are. But hopefully, I had a coach that said, after each conversation, try to be 5% wrong. And so every time I talk to someone, I just try to take away, all right, maybe I wasn't completely right on that. I can totally hear your view on it. It's not going to change mine completely, but I get where you're coming from. And I wish more people would do that. And you learn something from that, yeah.
Oh, that's great. And Sentari, some of the CEOs you worked with, I take it you've worked with dozens.
Yeah.
What was their mindset about this? Were they completely oblivious to the fact that they needed to work with these different sectors of society? Or were they saying, okay, let's do it. Let's work with the social impact groups. Let's work with the politicians.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it really just depends on that CEO, right? It was some folks got it right away and they were gung ho, and some folks it took in my 3-year tenure a couple of years to just get them to really say, like, all right, I could see why I should be donating to this PAC rather than saying I just want to give dollars to a foundation. It really depends on where they were and also their appetite. And I also think there are some people that are just attracted to it, right? So if you're a naturally politically savvy person, like it was your thing. And some folks are just, because of what you just said, had never been taught to engage in politics. Like they never talked about it at the dinner table, they talk about it with their friends. So they were coming from a place where they didn't understand how politics could impact business or social impact. So I would say it was a wide range, but I do think just them having the first step and engaging in those conversations was a big one.
It's kind of going off on a tangent for a minute. We're talking about CEO mindsets. One thing we learned from the pandemic is that government can act in a multitude of ways,
yes,
including shutting down businesses.
Yeah.
Do you think that was kind of a wake-up call to business owners that, my gosh, I need to be involved in the political process to either prevent this or advance it?
Yeah, I think last year really did. I think if anything, last year showed the power of private sector in politics, and right now you're seeing that in Texas with Governor Abbott with his mandates, right or wrong. That I'm not here to say that, but business is saying, like, we are either going to influence this by like either doubling down and supporting him or pulling out of the state. So I think it was really illuminating for people to think about, again, going back to what we said, how much how much the government actually does play
Yeah.
a role in your life. You may not think of it immediately, but then last year it was definitely clear around like my elected official can pretty much, well, in that sense, can dictate how I live my day to day. Whether that's right or wrong, that's for you to decide, but it is certainly an impact. And so more and more people should probably pay attention to who their local elected officials are. They should probably pay attention to what's going on in the national scene. And I think it at least showed people that they can't be ignorant or blind to it one way or the other.
And the policies that go into that as
Right,
well.
yes.
Because so many times, I mean, for instance, Arizona just passed, the landmark universal recognition law, where you can move from anywhere in the country to our state with an occupational license, and you start
Which
work
makes
day
sense,
one.
by the way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
More states should do
Yeah.
it. There's a plug for that. However, that whole aspect of being able to freely move a business, freely move your employees, freely move your income, how can business owners get involved in that policy process? Are they talking to their elected official? Are they donating to campaigns? Are they getting involved in grassroots activism? What did you see from the CEO groups that you worked with?
I think it was mostly getting around and having conversations around that same topic. So getting people around, getting around the table, like literally getting around the table and talking through, hey, we're seeing this bubble up. What can we do to influence, and what should that influence be? And what are people's stance and positions, and how do we have an actual educated and informed conversation about it? And now that this is a good one, because as more and more folks become more transient, mobile, it just makes sense. But I do know that there's probably some businesses that are very much for it, some that are very much against it, some individuals who are for and against. But it starts having that conversation at a table and saying, what are the positions, why do I believe in that position, and what can I do to advance that position either way? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And with these CEOs too, Sentari, where would you direct them to find this information? Were you the one providing it?
Yeah, so the really cool part about the gig was curating content and having facilitated conversations. So we did Jeffersonian dinners all the time, where we got 6 to 8 CEOs around a table and just talked about things. It was part of a national organization, so there's a big team of us helping curate, also helping bring in national speakers to Phoenix, to Dallas, to San Francisco. So there was a team effort, but all with the idea of we're advancing equity in education, economic opportunity, and then national and global security. So right now I'm definitely missing the gig, because there would be so much content around what's happening in Afghanistan, and I would love all these people coming together and talking about it, that I just
having these hard-hitting discussions that don't seem to be happening right now.
Oh gosh, yeah.
So, and that's another question. Why do you think that is? Do you think it's because of the last presidential election?
I think people definitely turned off. I
Okay.
mean, you see that on the, you see that in the ratings for every major news, Fox News, CNN, NBC News,
Their ratings are plummeting.
Because people are
aren't
like, I
watching.
don't want to deal with this anymore. I'm done after the last election, and I just can't do it, which is unfortunate. I definitely get it. I totally get it, but an uninformed citizen it's a sad one, and so I hope people get re-engaged. I read, if you don't, I read Tangle every day, which I love. Which it's a newsletter that comes daily, and it's this guy out of DC. His name's Isaac Saul. He takes a particular topic, and he's probably the most objective person I've seen. He says, what's the left saying, what's the right saying, and then he says my take, so it's completely editorialized. And if there's one thing I could direct people to read, and I did that for all the members that all the CEOs that I helped, it would be that thing, because I do think it's a good way of just like getting at least one look at like both political sides of the spectrum and what a person who's very well educated thinks.
Yeah, and that's interesting that you're directing people to readings, because one thing I hear a lot right now from CEOs is they're so sick of the political pundits and the personalities on TV that they'd rather just read these people or read an intellectual, which we're our intellectuals in all of this. That's another huge question.
Yes.
And so I guess, Sentari, with your journey, you've worn a lot of hats.
Yes.
You've been exposed to a lot of high-level CEOs, and you're an executive yourself. What is one thing you do with your staff to kind of keep them going on the path of you can achieve more?
That's a great question. So at Evolve MD, we are really we're really thoughtful, and we were just having this conversation today. Really thoughtful about people's journey. So for most of our staff, they're a master's level therapist, but we create intentional pathways for them to either grow up in the company or help us give them the tools that they need to go out and kind of grow themselves. And so, for me, a big piece of my journey has always been professional development and having mentors, coaches, and folks involved in that. So I think for us, at Evolved MD and every other role I've been in, it's actually intentionally developing your staff. And I think a big part of that is sitting with your direct reports and anyone in the company and saying like, hey, what do you want to do in 3 to 5 years? If it's with us, that's great, and we'll find a position for you here. And if not, what can I teach you, or what resources can we give you so that you can go to the next level? And a big piece of that is always just, I'm always pushing, be a voracious reader, a continuous learner, know what's going on in the world, because that will only help you. And so those are the things that we do to kind of develop. And my mindset and working with CEOs has always been develop your people, and they'll treat you right.
Mm-hmm. So you're training the next generation of leaders to eventually take over your company.
Exactly.
You know, one thing you've also touched on, you said it indirectly, is wellness.
Yes.
How important is mind and body in the workplace? And, you know, especially as an executive, you know, I'm sure you have internal battles with yourself all the time. You know, is there a resolution to that? Is there something that people should practice?
If just look me up on LinkedIn, Sentari Minor. I post a lot around self-care and wellness because our company is really intentional about doing that. So we actually bonus our folks on self-care and wellness. So are you doing the things that are going to keep you being the best person you are every day? So we have everyone block out time in their actual days to say, this is the time you're going to take a walk. This is the time you're going to listen to your podcast, whatever it might be. For me, it's being really thoughtful about my days. I know that one thing I have to do, I go to the gym every day, and for the days that I'm not, I'm clearly off, and so I make sure that I go every day. I was reading an article today about how to just block times in your schedule to do things for self-care, which I do. So if I can, I'll take any virtual meeting while I'm doing a walk. We'll do walking meetings as a staff, and so they're just small things that we do, but we know the importance of self-care and mental health on the workplace, and you have to be grounded. You have to take care of yourself if you're going to take care of others, and that's something we ingrain in our people nonstop. And we've created a culture and an ethos around it. We truly do want to make sure that our people are well taken care of, and that as an executive team, I'll tell you this, we all check on each other and say, like, hey, you're not showing up in the way I know you're showing up. Is something going on? Is something happening? And being really vulnerable and candid with each other and saying, yeah, this is happening at home, or this is what's happening right now, I'm overwhelmed, and coming together as a collective executive leadership team and saying, all right, what can we do to take that off Sentari's plate? Or, hey man, you need 2 days because you're not doing any good here, so just go read, go do something. And I think more and more company cultures need to start doing that, because gone are the days where employees are gonna burn out and be okay with it. More and more people are demanding things like, I need just time, or I need to figure this out, or I need a mechanism to actually take care of myself, and I think that's a trend that we're seeing happen right now.
And you're incentivizing this type of behavior,
Yes,
self-care and wellness, which is phenomenal. You're the first executive I've heard actually ever say that. You know, I know there used to be that old saying, oh, take a personal day.
Right.
You know, when I was in high school, I used to take a personal day all the time because I just couldn't deal with it. But it's kind of interesting that now, even as a grown adult, you know, you're seeing a lot of these companies, you know, have more time for bereavement.
Yeah.
You know, if they lose an animal.
Yes.
You know, things like that. And I think America is starting to wake up to the fact that wellness and mental health is an important aspect
Absolutely.
of your daily life.
Right.
You know, you look at the boomer generation and they never talked about depression. You know, they never talked about having that off day you
Right.
mentioned. People have them all the time.
Right.
And your company has created pretty much an open door policy to the fact that if you're having an off day, just tell us. And
Exactly.
tell me a little bit, how does that affect work performance, and are you getting more out of your employees because you empower them with that?
That's a good question. We definitely get more out of our employees, and there's so much buy-in and respect and transparency and just goodwill and grace that we get from our employees, because every time that we meet as a company, people say, oh no, our leadership team genuinely cares about us, or they are genuinely, and because we are in mental health, so we see the power of just reducing stigma. You touched on what we battle every day, is that there's a generation of people that just saying I'm having an off day means I'm weak, going to therapy is for crazy people, and that is something that's certainly been ingrained in American workforce culture, but I do think we're taking a big step back from that and saying, gone are the days where people believe that you don't show up as your whole self at work. So whatever happening in your personal life is gonna help, it's gonna hit your work performance, and we just have to understand that. So telling this person, yeah, okay, it seems like you're going through a divorce. Thanks for letting us know. What can we do to kind of shape your days and while you're going through this time? Or is there something that we can offer? Or is there anything that we can supplement? And having those conversations, you know what, that employee that remembers that, yeah, they let me have a week or just deal with this, is gonna stay with you for a really long time. and be really loyal to you.
And that's interesting. I would say your company is in a sense an outlier because not too many businesses do that or create that culture among their employees to feel even comfortable coming to their boss and saying that.
Yeah.
What are some barriers you see in other workplaces, in any environment, that employers are setting up to where employees don't have that direct line of communication to say, hey, I need a day?
I think it's one, the stigma. So I think people are...
In 2021, there's
yes,
still a stigma.
There's still, even, I would say from even the employee standpoint, right? Like even though my boss says that I'm okay, or they're okay with me talking to them about this, I just don't feel comfortable doing it. So we have to create a space where people do feel comfortable to be vulnerable and open. There's a great article that was how to talk to your employee about mental health, and it's not only on the employee side, but the management level side to be okay, and having the tools themselves to say, all right, I can take this on, or I know what to do here, or I can be an open door, because a lot of it is just like how you were socialized and raised. So if you were someone that didn't go to therapy and didn't understand an off day, then your subordinate coming to you and saying like, hey, Austin, I just need a day. You have to check yourself and your biases and say, all right, this is not me, but I understand why you need that. And so I think there's a lot of coaching that has to be involved in the management staff to just understand how to even be equipped with the tools to do that. But I also think it's overall just stigma in the United States. The younger generation, I think the stigma is kind of gone, so like everyone sees a therapist. But I do still think at the management level where you have people in their late 40s, 50s, 60s, it's still kind of like
they're struggling with it.
They're struggling with it. They're very much struggling with it. That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Because one thing during the pandemic that a lot of news media outlets are not talking about, and just for purpose of this conversation, my background actually is in behavioral health.
Oh wow, okay.
I ran a suicide prevention group called Minds Matter Arizona, then turned into Mindful University, and so we ran campaigns at the post-secondary level to encourage college students to see a therapist, seek on-campus support. And it was a great project. We did a lot of great things. Did we save lives? I have no idea. I hope to God we did. Right. However, one thing I'm noticing now, especially post-pandemic, is what types of behavioral health issues did people develop during this time, and how are employers dealing with that transition from full-time remote work back into the office? Because that has an impact on their mental health.
A lot of isolation, a lot of anxiety. You're seeing more and more people being with anxiety about going back to work. And what we're trying to do is really reduce the stigma, but also make it more accessible. So our model is bringing it to your primary care physician. We know that you're more likely to say, hey, Dr. Minor, these things are happening, or your primary care physician screening you and saying, hey, Austin, seems like it's a little off. You're showing these things on any screening instrument. Do you want to see someone? And we have that person on site. So we just make it easier for people to see folks. But we're seeing such a high prevalence rate, not only among just individuals. I'll tell you, we work in primary care offices all over, and we're seeing this from providers. So if you're a doctor in the United States, it's really hard for you right now. You're seeing everything, there's so much burden, and you're not getting the access to mental health that you need. So I think the pandemic definitely exacerbated probably everything for everyone. So if you had an underlying mental health condition, 2020 brought that out. And then the other piece is that there's not enough mental health providers to actually deal with that much demand. So it's just kind of like, there's a storm that's brewing, it's already coming up, and now employers are going to have to take the brunt of that because your employees are showing up saying, I'm anxious, I was isolated for this entire time, I have a bunch of mental health things to deal with, and I don't even know where to go with that.
And do you think that affects turnover rates at companies if high-level executives aren't used to dealing with those kind of discussions?
I don't have the data on that, but I would say anecdotally, I'm sure it does. Employees are burnt out. Employees want to feel heard. Employees want to know that you're part of the solution. And if not, everyone's seeing it right now. I've been reading papers about this, about the Great Resignation, but they're going to find someone who'll do it for them. Or they'll just say, I don't need this right now. I'm going to figure this out and give me some time. So I do think for executives to be more mindful and try to equip themselves with the tools and resources that they need. I have a therapist, I have an executive coach. I would definitely say for any top leader, if you don't have a therapist and executive coach, you're doing yourself a disservice. It's so helpful and so impactful because you have to be your best self to show up for your people. We have a company of 40 and our leadership team is about 7 of the executives, and all of us are really thoughtful and really mindful about how we take care of ourselves because we know that we have a big group of folks that's rapidly expanding that we also have to take care of. So my advice to any CEO that's listening to this or anyone on the CEO track is get the help that you definitely need, because everyone needs the help, and then really be transparent about that with your staff. I think everyone on our team knows about all of our mental health journeys and how much therapy and coaching and counseling has helped us, and so I think that's why they're so open to telling us what's going on in their lives too.
No, that's great to hear, because one thing I try to do with a lot of my employees is really trying to be an ambassador for wellness. Take care of yourself, eat well,
Yes.
Exercise. If you don't like to exercise, go on a walk, like you said.
Right.
No one's asking you to go lift 125
Right,
pounds
right.
on dumbbells or bench press every single day.
Right.
But there's little things that you could do.
Small steps.
With CEOs specifically, I'm seeing that there's going to be, this next 6 months, more cases where they're having to deal directly with employees about this issue of wellness.
Yes.
That transition back into the workplace, back into an 8 to 5 schedule, getting out of your bed and out of your pajamas, and doing your hair, putting your makeup on, and going to the office.
Right.
That's a transition for people.
Yeah, it's going to be it's going to be a transition and kind of like a death in a sense of their former way of life. I've heard so many people that are like, I just got used to being home with my dog or my kids or whatever, and now that change in lifestyle that they so loved is gone. And it seems like a lot more companies are trying to work with people in a hybrid model. I'm not entirely sure what every company is doing, but it seems like there's no winning, and it also seems like people are really, really fighting going back to the office, and it seems like they're fighting going back to the office because they truly love the lifestyle that they had, and it's going to be hard for them to transition back.
That's excellent. Well, Sentari, you've obviously been to a lot of America's Futures events.
Yes.
You've moderated a couple of our Jeffersonian dinners. You've been fantastic. One question that comes up a lot, and I ask all my executives and CEOs this: what does freedom mean to you?
What does freedom mean to me? I've thought about that question, and I think it's mostly, freedom means like empowerment and agency. So, agency to make choices for yourself, for your family, for the people around you, agency to have an impact in your community, just being free to also mess up, and freedom means having grace and mercy. Coming out of last year, there were so many conversations that I had that I feel like most people don't understand that America, as flawed as it is, has a unique place in that you can have a conversation and dialogue with someone and it not end up being a place where you're persecuted. I mean, maybe persecuted on social media, but not legally persecuted for certain things. And I think we've lost sense of that. So I always bring it back to agency of like having the power to not do what you want, but do what's important to you. And then empowerment from the sense of having freedom means just you can use your resources, you can use what you have, who you are, and invest in a way that I don't think many people realize. They think having the freedom to make those choices is so important, so impactful, and if more and more people realize just the power that they have, I think our society would be much better off. But I wish that more people would reflect on that question.
Well, Sentari, thank you so much for your
for
time
having me.
today. You've been phenomenal. So cheers to wellness. And to everyone tuning in, I'm Austin Jack with America's Future. Thank you so much for watching today, and take care of yourselves at home. Cheers.